now joined via Zoom by Sarah Motha from the Foundation for Human Rights. A very good afternoon to Sarah. Thanks very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Thank you very much to you and the listeners and viewers at home.
All right. Well, in a country with such big inequality gaps, in fact, I think it is said that our country is the most unequal in the world. In terms of human rights and the gains that could or should be celebrated, is there much to be celebrated when we consider the fact that the most vulnerable citizens in our country really live in the most appalling ways that have no dignity, and we can't really speak much of human rights being upheld?
Correct. I mean, as the foundation, what we've been trying to do since we had set up in 1996 is to be a supporter for civil society organizations to go out in their communities and teach people about their rights that are enshrined in the Constitution in their own languages, but also know where to go when these rights are violated. And certainly over years, since we ushered ourselves to this democratic era, we see a lot of disturbing conditions of rights in which people live under. So it's really a challenge in this country of talking or celebrating about, rights as we are today in, National Human Rights Day.
Yeah. The other issue I want to bring up, while we do commemorate Human Rights Day, is that, the country is seeing a rise in cases of things like racial tensions, hatred, and I've spoken about inequalities too. What are these incidents saying or the picture that they're painting about the country and the direction that the country is taking? I mean, we have days like this where we sing Kumbaya, but the reality and the majority of the year, it's a different situation. We're seeing really things that we don't want to see about this country, and maybe we could talk to that, about where this country is going.
Well, as the foundation, we just did a research on the state of intolerance, looking at the issue of racial discrimination and xenophobia per se. We're seeing a high increase of levels of intolerance amongst, in fact, even the young people who in 2015, for example, when the Minister of Basic Education asked the foundation to design a program for dealing with social equity and social cohesion in schools, we found that most of the intolerance and discrimination attitudes that learners have in schools who are young, have never gone through the apartheid era of discrimination, are learning this from their parents. And the recent incidences of some schools in Gauteng and elsewhere are showing that the state of intolerance, the state of discrimination on the basis of your race is increasing, is never going down. And in fact, perhaps it could point into the direction of the need for human rights education at a school level, though it's part of now the government policy that human rights education must be part of the school curriculum. But we're seeing less and less of results of people being able to tolerate each other and therefore live in a country where equality and non-discrimination must be realized, as these are the things that we fought for during apartheid. Yeah. Certainly, there's a high level of intolerance based on our report that we recently finalized and discovered that indeed discrimination is live in this country.
Well, in his speech today, President Cyril Ramaphosa said that the South African Constitution, which is, by the way, applauded as being one of the best constitutions in the world, if not the best, obliges the state to protect and uphold the rights of South Africans and to ensure everyone's basic needs are progressively met. Would you say that the government is doing that at the moment? And I mean, as the head of government, to be raising that, would you say that that is indeed currently the case, or that there certainly are some gaps, and how big are those gaps?
There are major gaps. In fact, there is a UN World Program on human rights education that mandates every institution of formal and informal learning to ensure that human rights education becomes part of their curriculum, irrespective of whether you're studying medicine or architecture or agriculture. You must have human rights as a standard program that you are providing for your students or your participants, both in a formal and an informal. And less has been done in that area, in particular mainstreaming human rights, language and practice in our workplace, in our home situation, and in our streets. Hence, there's these heightened levels of tensions and intolerance amongst different racial groups, and even amongst different linguistic or tribal groups in South Africa. You're seeing with the recent tensions between people who are born in South Africa and those that are not born from South Africa, that really these past attitudes of discrimination have been carried on to the present, where you talk of non-nationals being killed, 68 of them during the 2008 xenophobic attacks, let alone that those that were murdered were also amongst them, half of them were South Africans, just because they were discriminated on the basis of their looks. So certainly there's more that needs to be done, and the Foundation for Human Rights, with its own resources, has tried to develop a user-friendly way in which people can access the Constitution, the knowledge, the content, by using cartoons, which we call animation series, being broken down into 20 series or plays of the Constitution, focusing on each right, such as the right to equality, compressed into 5 minutes of audiovisual material, and accessible in at least 4 languages for now that are spoken in South Africa, so that any person in their mobile phones, they can look at it online on YouTube, they can be able to access that content. And there's still more that needs to be done in the country. I mean, you ask people what are rights and how to access them. People barely know where to access those rights. And as the foundation, we're trying to let it out there that each episode at least has a place or contact details where a person should go when their rights are violated, because it's one way to know about your rights. But another thing is that we have duty bearers, people who need, institutions of government and Chapter 9s that are supposed to be protecting and promoting those rights, and where people must go to report.
All right, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, ma'am. We appreciate your time here on SABC News. Sarah Motha, who is from the Foundation for Human Rights. Many thanks to you.